You're welcome to the Economy and Politics Show, where we discuss key political economic developments as it affects households. This is a special edition, and the focus today will be the regulation of Nigeria's downstream petroleum sector, connecting the dots. And on the sidelines of the recent Nigeria-British Chamber of Commerce Forum, which discussed Nigeria's downstream oil and gas industry, navigating post-PI realities, I had the opportunity of discussing with Mr. Tunji Oyebanji, who was one of the discussants, CEO of Double One PLC. That will be our trust for today. Before we begin, let us give you a recap of some key socioeconomic stories from last week. The federal government announced that it has issued petroleum prospective licenses to 57 companies, for which it realized over 200 billion naira and $7 million. Also last week, the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority threatened to shut down filling stations selling fuel above the approved pump price of 165 naira per litre. The chief executive of NNPC, Farouk Ahmed, said the regulator has warned members of the Depot and Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria and the Major Oil Marketers Association of Nigeria that retailers who sell above the agreed price will see their license revoked. That's all from the key stories from last week, as it has to do with the economic space. Now, with the prevailing socioeconomic challenges in Nigeria, I was concerned if it was still a wise decision for the government to fully deregulate the downstream segment of the oil and gas sector, which implies subsidy removal. Wouldn't it have a social implication on Nigerians at this time, which of course the position of Moman? This is what Mr. Tunji Oyebanji, the CEO of Double One PLC, had to say.
We definitely, obviously, going that route today will have some implications. But the question is, on the other hand, what is also happening to Nigeria? By not fully deregulating, we are increasing our borrowing levels. Our debt to GDP ratio continues to rise. And Nigeria is actually running into a physical black hole. So it's a case of, yes, we don't want the negative social impacts that come with full deregulation. But at the same time, the country is moving closer and closer to an economic precipice. So we have to make a choice. And for me, what needs to be done is to find ways to minimize the impact on the most vulnerable members of society. I don't think the correct answer is to avoid it completely. If we avoid it completely, then the country as a whole is going into a very big, deep economic hole. And at the time when that becomes an issue, it may now be even bigger than, the social impact that we are trying to avoid.
Now, economists and experts feel that the Petroleum Industry Act is on a pause mode. This is hindering Nigeria from benefiting from the current favorable international crude oil price, as our production is not up to level to even earn from this very favorable season in the international crude oil price level. I asked Mr. Tunji Oyebanji what was his perspective on this and how the government can position in terms of reforms to benefit from this period.
Well, the challenge we've always had in Nigeria is that we believe things can be done overnight. It took 20 years to pass the PIA bill, and all the right investment decisions that needed to have been made maybe 10, 15 years ago were not done. So the fact that PIA has been passed in 2021, unfortunately, all those investments are not going to happen overnight. And that is why we have been clamoring for that piece of legislation to have been passed a long time ago. So, but according to my people, they say whenever you wake up is your morning. So at least we've got that legislation in place now. So the sooner we can start implementing it and attracting that investment, I think the better for all of us.
Across the world, we've seen the impact of liberalization of state-owned oil companies. Is it Saudi Aramco of Saudi Arabia or Petrobras? This has been done through the capital market being leveraged and creating value. But why is the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation not fully liberalized? We know that something is coming very soon, and we're expecting that to unfold in the NNPC. But the big question is that, is the value, is there going to be real value in this liberalization to the capital markets? And that is a very important aspect I inquired from Mr. Tunji Oyebanji.
Well, ultimately, I think the best driver of a commercial activity is when the entity is owned by the public, especially, some of the other countries where you have you've pointed at, what kind of political involvement is involved with those entities. So for us, I think the best way to get true value is to ensure that NNPC Limited operates really on a commercial basis. If it does, then we'll be able to get the full benefits of having a commercial enterprise. But if it is just in name and all the decisions continue to be political considerations, then unfortunately we will not be able to get the full benefit, of such commercialization. So the jury is out. We have to wait and see how things will play out. But just changing the name and describing it as a commercial enterprise, it's actually in the operations that we will see. Day-to-day operations, how they interact with customers, both local and international, how they abide by contracts that they sign, corporate governance environment, all those things are what really will tell whether, if indeed, truly they are a commercial enterprise.
Part of the important areas of connecting the dots when it has to do with the oil and gas downstream sector deregulation is achieving effective logistics. This has to do with transportation of petroleum products across the country and also having an effective access to even the ports and the free trade zones where activities are happening. I asked Mr. Tunji Oyebanji if there is a connection and understanding between the government and private sector as covered by the PIA on this, and if investments are being channeled to this very critical aspect of the industry.
One of the things that PIA is supposed to actually encourage is open access, allow access to those kind of infrastructure that you spoke about. So again, when we talk about implementation, those are some of the things we talk about, because definitely if more people can, for instance, put their product through the pipelines, then definitely we'll begin to see better results for the industry as a whole.
That was a very interesting conversation on the need to ensure that the reforms around the oil and gas industry, particularly the need to deregulate the downstream sector, is taking full circle to ensure that each part of the value chain aligns to create value for Nigeria, because oil and gas industry still remains a key pivot of our economic growth and development. That'll be all for this edition of the Economy and Politics Show. If you have suggestions, comments, and questions on the topic we discussed today, the regulation of Nigeria's petroleum sector, downstream segment, connecting the dots, please send them to Ottoabasi Abasiekong at proshare.co. Also, you can visit our website, www.proshare.co, to read our latest economic, market, and political stories as it affects the oil and gas sector. You can also follow our social media platforms displayed on the screen. Till we come your way again, thank you for watching and have a nice day.